Coming to you from rugby's greatest fortress, New Zealand's national stadium, Eden Park, is the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. A mind-blowing weekend of rugby. The Crusaders hammered at home by the Brumbies. That was crazy. The Chiefs and the Highlanders game was good. The Blues got up. The Hurricanes looked phenomenal in their first outing against, admittedly, a weak Moana Pacifica team. What happened to England and the Six Nations and Ireland? Suddenly looked like their old selves. Scotland somehow got over Wales. And of course, we'll have your emails as well. ARP@fandommedia.co.nz. You can catch all of our content throughout the week on @Aotearoa Rugby Pod official channels, YouTube, socials, of course, as an audio pod as well. And then you can get us on stuff.co.nz, New Zealand's biggest news website. You can get the full pod, articles, segments, plenty to watch there. And Rugby Pass as well. Go to the Rugby Pass app, catch Aotearoa Rugby Pod there. Plus, go into their match centre where their stats are. That's what we use. They look really, really good. But let's start with the Crusaders. James Parsons.
Wow.
Yeah. Is there any other word?
Yeah, well, look, I wasn't completely convinced on the Brumbies last week against the Force. They took a bit of time to get into it, but to come to Christchurch 26 years since they last won. Stephen Larkin was playing the last time they won in Christchurch, now coaching. He had the emotions of Eden Park last year with the Blues, now with the Crusaders. You get the feeling, the balance, the Australian sides in particular with the new laws seem to be utilising the ball a lot more and not resorting to kicking. They're looking to obviously spread it. And even when they get that pressure, you know, the before Slippers try, Muirhead stepping back in, just felt like they were more instinctive rather than being so prescribed in their phase play.
But also applied pressure really well, especially in that first half when the penalty count just added up.
Yeah, and again, that's probably a Crusaders that, you know, like when we've seen in the past, when they've had that high penalty count, it has put them in troubled areas, but they still put themselves in a position to win. What surprised me is the pressure and how the foot went on the throat in that last 15 minutes by the Brumbies, because they didn't actually capitalise in that first 20 minutes. Like the Brumbies had 3 or 4 goes and didn't come away with points. Crusaders went down. Dave Havili scored pretty much straight away, but they kept their nerve. They stuck to it. But that last 15 minutes and blowing it out to 50, they hadn't conceded 50 points since 2001. You know, like this is a Crusaders dynasty that they're the champions.
Brenna, what did you make?
As a former Crusader, I think you can see the smile on my face. But I think considering what was on the line, I think, look, the Brumbies, there was I can't remember how many years it was, but I think it's maybe 20 odd years since they had won that game down in Christchurch. And, you know, the fact that it was James Slipper's 200th game, which adds to that occasion. So they were playing for, not just for themselves, but a guy that has done a lot for Australian rugby and in Brumbies rugby. So, I think it's just a common trend with what we've seen in the Crusaders the last 2 weeks. The high error rate, the penalties, the execution, I guess, of when you do see a really good Crusaders team, they're able to execute under pressure in big moments, which they haven't been able to do in the first 2 weeks. And you've got to be able to commend that last 10 to 15 minutes from the Brumbies as well. Tries to Valentini, Bowron and Corey Toole with the 80th minute to have, you know, the icing on the cake. But, you know, they deserved their win. So I think for the Crusaders, it doesn't get any easier, unfortunately, Ross. We've got the Chiefs next up, and 0-3 is a high possibility. So I know that group will be hurting. They'll be wanting to find some solutions pretty quickly because, 0-3 in terms of the start of this competition, knowing that they've had somewhat of an easy draw. I hate to say it, but being 0-3 definitely isn't a good start for the defending champions.
To do that in their own backyard, the Brumbies, well, there's 2 Aussie teams at the top of the table.
But I think the thing that concerned me about them is that in the past, in those last 15, 20 minutes, it's going to plan. Both last week and this week, they brought on the cavalry. And we're talking about Cody Taylor and Lester Whainga-Nuku. We're not talking about just any old cavalry. And they couldn't get it done still. And
I suppose the biggest concern is there are 3 or 4 lineouts on the bounce where they were rushing and they lost. And they, you know, normally their set piece, they go to it and they can build phases and pressure. They just didn't have that composure, and I think obviously missing someone of like Scott Barrett's experience in and around that line out is probably just showing that these young guys have got a bit to learn.
Yeah, and they've got the Chiefs away next.
It's very reminiscent of what the Blues went through last year, isn't it? You know, like they could be 0-3 and then chasing their season and looking to sort of sneak into the playoffs rather than be at the pointy end and having, those home finals.
Within that group, probably the solutions are there, that you've got to be able to have solutions. And I think accountability will be a big part of that. I think internally that starts with the players. No doubt they'll be able to put their hands up and see where they went wrong, whether that's through defence, the attack, the units, whether it's backs or forwards. They'll be having those conversations within themselves to try and rectify that. But then also the coaches, whether that was through the preparation through the week or they felt that they weren't hitting the areas that they needed to. And I think the trends that I'm touching on, Ross, it comes down to the unforced errors, the penalties, and the execution of, decision making under crucial situations. We probably haven't seen against the Brumbies in the last 15 minutes of this game, and then probably the last 10 minutes of the other game against the Highlanders when they did had a couple of opportunities which they missed out on. So, yeah, it'll be with themselves, but it doesn't get any easier. I know that Chiefs game, they've had 2 hard derby wins, which I think they're very battle-tested against the Crusaders, where I think, the Crusaders have got a bit of soul-searching to do this coming week for the Chiefs derby in a week's time.
When you look at the weapons that Brumbies team has got, when you've got Valetini there, you've got Toole there, you've got Muirhead, you've got so much there. But I want to touch on Karl, because he reminds me of P.S. Spies.
Yeah. It's actually a good comparison. Maybe not. I think if he could put on a bit more size, he'd be more dominant in the collision. He's great in those open spaces. But I think if he was to go to that international level, he'd want a little bit of size. But oh man, he's one of those players that turns up in the right place. Pollock-esque, like similar sort of style. They hang out in the wide trenches, but also can have that pick and go off the back of the scrum and manage to. Although I think Ethan Blackett actually helped him get down there because he absolutely nailed Noah Hotham instead of Karl. But look, he's a strong performer. And I think he'll grow in confidence. I really like the leadership of Lonergan as well. That 8-9 combination seems to be really building. And what we're seeing with these new laws, the more the game can be dictated by a 9, it seems to be the more front foot ball sides get, that it just allows the 10, like Meredith, sort of pull the trigger, like the chip over the top. He was just scotty and he's like, yeah, I want it. He even pointed it. And that's why I think it was Gardner put so much pressure, because he was just, and he's like, put it over, got the bounce, try. They just seem very composed, but they know what they're about, and they're a triple threat. They can bully you straight up the guts. They can go around you like Corey Toole showed, and then they have the nifty kicking game that can sort of execute and dismantle your defence. And then I feel great impact from Tane Edmund as well. He came onto the park, and I think he'll be wanting to push for more time in that 10 jersey.
And they've been away from home so far.
It's not looking good for the Blues trip to Canberra, that's for sure. They are looking seriously good. Like their set piece is rock solid. They even were down men and they held strong. Like that was a dominating performance. Right. Like I've never seen a Crusaders side concede that many points in their last 10 minutes. Like it was like rapid fire.
Yeah.
It was like within 7 points, games in the balance, and then it was 50.
Yeah.
And I was
just like that.
holy dooly, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So it's good for the comp. Not so good for us Kiwi fans at the moment, but hopefully the Blues can get one up on them next week.
We'll see. Chris Minto, one of our viewers, was onto the email, and you can send us an email to arp@fandommedia.co.nz. He was onto the email literally the moment that the full-time whistles was gone. He was probably typing the email in the middle of the game. He says, I have to say the Brumbies looked like a better team than the Crusaders throughout the whole game. That really caught me by surprise, as I wasn't expecting that. There wasn't much sign of a post-loss backlash, I suppose referring to the Highlanders loss, and they don't look like they did last year. What's the missing piece of the secret Crusader sauce that's not on the plate so far this year?
Yeah, well, I think you have to acknowledge the 10 position, Rivers Reihana not being able to front up. The consistency, you saw how good Rivers Reihana got with him consistently being in that 10 jersey, and they just haven't had, I suppose, that in the first 2 games. And I suppose that the big thing for me is still they're a team that needs to dominate the set piece, and we probably just haven't seen that from them either. And if they can't get that front foot ball, it is hard for their game to get going. But they made uncharacteristic Crusader, like even I think Noah Hotham got in the way of Will Jordan, and you could see the frustration because it was a penalty, gave away prime counter-attack opportunities. So they just were a little bit clunky, and I agree, like un-Crusader-like. But I also do think, like you said, I do think it was more to do with the Brumbies and the way the Brumbies put them under pressure, constantly under pressure with both sides of the ball, that forced them into uncharacteristic errors.
Defensively, Bryn, what's the story? That's not Crusader-like.
It's an easy fix, really. I think it just comes down to the individuals and being able to do it under pressure. And that's what we've come to know with the Crusaders, whether that was through Razor's tenure. He was able to, in big games and big moments, you'd see the Crusaders get over the line, whether it was in semi-final games, big derby games or anything like that. The players within that group were able to do that on a consistent basis. So there's enough experience that's been in that title run through Razor's time, or even previously last year that were defending champions. They've just got to be able to, within themselves, have processes to be able to try and get that right. And I think obviously losing Scott Barrett is a big part of that. No doubt, I probably talked to the early part of the year, losing a guy like him, you lose Quinton Strange, who's gone over to Japan. That experience you just can't buy when it comes into the forwards. So I think it'll be all there for them, but I think knowing themselves and knowing that group, they'll be able to try and be real accountable for their own selves. And then I think also you've just got to go out and execute. There's really no more, not excuses, but you just got to go out there and do the job. And if you don't, then you get results with what we probably saw against the Highlanders and the Brumbies.
And there were moments in the second half where they pulled that back, where they got the Brumbies under pressure. 3 or 4 penalties came in a row, and you got the feeling it's about to happen.
Well, I thought it was. I was like, this could go to Golden Point. And literally 5 minutes or 6 minutes later, they'd scored twice. And I was like, wow, I did not see this coming.
The ability to keep your composure all the time. It's like they scored, they buttoned off. They scored, they buttoned off. They scored, and that was quite frustrating to watch.
Yeah, but I think it shows the Brumbies did the same last week. Like once they got going, you actually can't stop them. So although we get fixated on our New Zealand teams, I do think it was more to do with the Brumbies than I suppose the Crusaders playing poorly.
Yeah. Let's have a look at that Chiefs Highlanders.
Yeah, it was a tight contest. I think the Highlanders are the real deal. You see how they sort of finished and probably let a few opportunities go. But for me, the turning point was obviously the dropout. They had the ability, they were hot on attack, they went for the crossfield kick, maybe could have used hands. But then the wits about Quinn Tupaea, what sort of form is he in? And his knowledge of those laws, and then to take advantage of it, Leroy Carter to react, and that was almost the game there. It was a 14-point play.
It was. Did you think it was a dropout?
Oh, I'd say it was simultaneously. Like I just feel like it was. They must have looked at it, and all it needs to do is touch a blade of grass, then kick. So I think it was probably enough to let go, but there was definitely a lot of doubt when I first saw it.
I agree with Chip. I think that it was simultaneous. I think it wasn't enough for it to be able to be brought back and thinking that they would disallow that try. But yeah, I was similar to Chip around being simultaneous and being able to be made the right decision. I just think in terms of the game, like it was a big moment in the game. I think it was a 14-point play. I think, you do talk around those kind of things as players, and a great heads-up play from Quinn to be able to recognise that, because I think, if you think about it, probably should have been possibly a try with that crossfield kick from Miller, but, a great heads-up play, and they go 80 metres to be able to score a try. So, yeah, there wasn't much in the game. I think if you look at the stats, it's pretty even in all accounts, but I think also Leroy Carter's, Samasoni Tokiaho's try in the 61st minute, pretty much an overthrow, and, 2 tries that they didn't have to work very, very hard for, So I think considering how tight that game was, those 2 tries was pretty much 14 points and ended up being probably the difference, I believe, in that game.
So, Brendan, you're Cam Miller and you're kicking cross fields to Withy, right? Are you considering what happens if he doesn't catch the ball and dot it down, and whether or not there's people out there to cover? Is that actually something that's in a player's brain when they make a play like that?
I think it's like players around it. There's always that stay on call. You'll hear it on the microphone. A lot of players being able to stay on, whether it's a quick line out, or if you look at that example, the quick kick. But yeah, most players will then be able to, if that kick goes dead or whatever it may be, you get to reset and you start thinking about the quick kick or a quick play. And unfortunately, if you do look at the wide view, I think if there was visions of the game that all the Highlanders boys were pretty much had their backs turned, and it was a pretty fatiguing play. I think there was a lot of guys that were off their feet considering how open it was, and then a great heads up play from Quinn, and then they pretty much go 80 metres. And I think as a forward jipper, you'd be pretty demoralised knowing that you almost scored a try, and then from there you're down in the opposite post, being able to get some water and thinking, geez, how do we let that one slip? It's almost a try for us, and then it ends up being a try for them.
I reckon the hard thing is working out if it should be a 22 or a goal line dropout, to be honest. Like, I didn't even know at the time, and I think if you're going through your thought process, I think there might have been an assumption it was a 22, and that's why they buttoned off, and Quinn Tupaea obviously knew what it could be and took advantage of that. And I agree with Bryn as well, the overthrow. And that's why I say I think the Highlanders are the real deal. Like, I think they're going to be a very hard side to beat moving forward in this competition, because defensively they're so strong. They dominated the breakdown, 7 breakdown turnovers, dominant tackle stats were higher, they around 89-90% accuracy, so they make teams really work for their points. And the Chiefs, aside that, I suppose a big pack, a lot of All Blacks like to dominate that collision, only had 24% dominant carries. So you can see, because they're slowing that ball down at the breakdown, they can bring that line speed presence, which is allowing them to sort of dictate terms on defence. Big thing for them, though, is the penalties. Don't give away too many, but they give them away at crucial times and allow teams like the Chiefs to just get in, probably an easy entry into the 22. But I think they're going to be at the pointy end of this competition, the Highlanders, if they can stay injury-free. Obviously, their depth would be the one question, but at the moment, they're looking red hot. Tangitau, holy dooly. That was an explosive, I think he might have watched our thing and said, I'll show you 44 Ks an hour. This is what it looks like, because that is rapid. It's like a combination of like a Caleb Clark and, like a Mark Talia. He's got that dance ability, that speed, and then the size. I suppose the one thing for him, Bryn, though, is probably that aerial game. So crucial now, especially at that international level, is there that development that we can see throughout the season that gets him a crack in that black jersey.
Yeah, I think in the aerial game, if it's one part of his game that if he continues to keep it improving, especially the international level like Caleb Clark, then yeah, look, he's a like for like, I think, in terms of what that power winger looks like for the All Blacks. So yeah, it's an early part of the year, but if he can continue to keep being better in that space and getting those tap backs and being able to, I guess, win those 50-50s in the air, then it puts yourself in that conversation to be that power winger. Because I think, you look at Caleb Clark, we probably touched on last year, he was probably the difference around that power winger, which we probably had back in the day, and his aerial ability. So, the attack that we see from Tangitau, his speed, we've definitely seen that in the last 2 games. But if we're able to get that aerial game and get those 50-50 balls a little bit more, then yeah, it opens up the door for being in that All Black squad at the back end of the year or in that June series.
Bryn, do you think, though, the Highlanders need to be a little bit more ambitious on attack? Like, they obviously kick a hell of a lot. So, I mean, normally under the roof, we've probably seen that in 2015 when they won. Aaron Smith did a lot of kicking. And I understand the theory, but I think even when they get down there, they've shown how dangerous they can be with Nareki, Tangitau coming on that blind side. I don't know, could they just back themselves, I suppose, with ball in hand a little bit further out?
I think so. I think we looked at probably the first game and around how many kicks they did have, and it seems to be a plan that they have inside their half. They're not going to play a lot of footy. And I think in that first half, Folau Fakatava's his box kicks were able to be on the money, and they were able to get that ball off that in that kind of pressure game. I think in the second half, I think early doors, I think his first 3 kicks, they were long, and then you give the Chiefs the ability to be able to play. It's a little bit easier for them. But yeah, I agree. If you look at that first try with Nareki, the quick ball that they're able to play with Folau Fakatava getting out and getting that ball nice and wide, like Tavatawa Nawa is a big part of that. Him being able to get over the advantage line, then Folau's able to pick the ball up, hit the runners that are able to penetrate the line, and he makes a really good decision with a great cutout ball to be able to be Nareki's first try. So yeah, and I think we talked around a couple of years ago their efficiency in the 22 when Folau Fakatava and co were able to play on top of teams, get around the corner, have your 13 or your 50 being able to play on top of them as well. So, whether they're able to want to be able to bring that out a little bit more in their exit, it does seem to be a bit of a trend for them inside their half. They don't want to be able to play too much. So, yeah, I agree with you. And they have altered their shape a little bit. I think they are, a lot of teams actually now, a trend has been able to have a 4-man pod outside of 9 to try and get a little bit wider to that 5th, 6th, 7th defender. So, when they're playing on top of teams, winning collisions and being able to get out the back and having that kind of X factor with Nareki and Tangitau out on the edge, it is a lot more. It is a great way for them to attack. So, it'd be interesting to see if they do change it up a little bit in the exit zone, because they are good once they're able to play on top of teams.
Is it a scary thought that the Chiefs don't seem to have got into second gear? Like they've won 2 games, but they probably would say they haven't been as clinical as they'd like.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think it's just been opportunist things that have kind of happened for them in the first 2 weeks. Like, there wasn't that much between them and the Blues and the Chiefs. You know, that Cortez Ratima with Tupaea being able to execute under pressure and score that try to win the game. And then, like I said, in the Highlanders game, 2 opportunist tries with Quinn Tupaea and their heads-up play, and Tokiaho with that line-out throw to be able to score points. And that's 14 points in terms of a pretty tight derby game. And but one thing I have been impressed with, and I think, you know, whether you think this is not, I just think their counter-attack off turnover ball, like, they're able to just kill teams at the moment. If you look on the weekend with the Highlanders, now they didn't score a lot of points off it, but whenever the Highlanders were able to build pressure and momentum, a little knock on, like you look at Josh Lord, for example, I think Falau Fakatava is running at the ruck, it's a little loose carry, and then from that, it's a quick turnover attack. Josh Lord's go 70 metres, and they almost score from that. So I think their turnover attack and being able to put teams under pressure through teams' mistakes, it's been a big part of their game. But I agree with you, Jip. They haven't really got out of second gear, but they are looking 2 from 2. And if you look at the early part of the year, that's what you want to be able to try and do. Get as many wins as you can, and then you like to think throughout the duration of the competition, they'll get a lot better, and we'll see a better side than we have at the moment.
The Chiefs play a lot closer to the ruck than the Highlanders. It's quite interesting. The Highlanders are willing to give it more movement than they were.
I think they've just got those big bodies, but they also have a lot of trust in coming off that 9. You know, obviously with Josh Jacob and Damien McKenzie, they'll demand the ball when they want it. But with Ratama and Rowe, although he wasn't there on the weekend, I think they want to have a snipe. They want to have that ability. So that's almost the bailout, like when they look. And then when you've got Takiaho, you can just hit him on a short ball and he's getting gain line every time. Like, he's playing great footy. And then, you know, you bring in those 2 big locks. They do, Bryn and I were talking about it before, but off 9, they're sort of running that 4-pod outside 9 and looking to try and get the width, if it's available, to trap defenders, to then hopefully get that quick ball. And that's when Jacob and McKenzie, if they're running flat, they can make teams pay. I think the hard thing, though, for the Chiefs is they just haven't been able to set their outsides alight. You know, we haven't heard too much of Taumui Falau. Nano Saturu hasn't always, I suppose, seen himself on that edge. And Leroy Carter, like a lot of the big running plays that have come, they're from turnovers or kick counter returns. So I think there's a little bit fine-tuning to do in their phase play, and probably too much crash and bash, and trying to, you know, like I said, you know how the South Africans do it. They'll almost humble themselves and they'll fall at your feet to create quick ball. I think if they could do that now and again, it would really catch teams off guard.
Let's talk Tanzoni Taukiaho for a second. This battle for the number 2 jersey is so good.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, like, I would even say, like, Jack Taylor obviously spent his time All Blacks 15. He was strong. There is quality hookers across the park. Safar Moore's back. But Takiaho, both weeks, he is really sort of, when the game's been on the balance, he's made a big play. I know the overthrow's one. Still got to be on. Still got to be able to get across the line. And you know, he barges over with ease. But also those tough carries. I think the best thing about his game, which suits the international game, is his size. And I was speaking to him the other day. He's a little bit lighter than he normally is, and he looks better for it. You know, he's certainly getting around the park. He's getting a lot of touches, and he's still got that power to get across the gain line. I suppose what it will come down to is the core roles, your set piece, who's nailing their throws and delivering in that scrum. The other sort of stuff takes care. They're all pretty good at around the field, you know, like all big ball carriers, all big defenders. So the key nature will be in that sort of scrum throwing. Well, not so much throwing, they're all pretty accurate throwers, but as we saw a couple of times, the scrum came under pressure at international level last season. So having that bulk and that dominance up front throughout the Super competition, whoever the coach may be, will be looking at that.
Now, as ever, we've had some emails come through, so send us an email at arp@fandommedia.co.nz and we'll try our best to include you into the show. And also, if you want to be on the mailing list each week to get the information on what we're up to with our content throughout the week, please also send an email to that email. We'll add you on. And one of the things that's come through from Eddie Cameron. Now, Eddie says, late in the Chiefs v Highlanders, the TMO intervenes, rightly pinging George Dyer for a neck roll. Problem was that it happened upfield. In the Highlanders 22, the game had already moved downfield. To the Chiefs 22, Dyer gets yellow carded. Highlanders get penalty 80 metres away from the infringement. I think that it's unfair on the Chiefs. Bryn, what's your take on that?
Yes and no, but I think considering like what we do see with the referees now and the TMO, if it's in terms of like if it's harmful and it's something that's been able to, I guess, be worth a yellow card, then it is able to be brought back. So yeah, I can understand how it would be a little bit frustrating, but I think for us in Super Rugby, we're pretty good around what the TMO system looks like. I don't think many assistants are able to come in and been able to do that unless it's been able to be a yellow card offence. And so I guess if you are a fan, it is a little bit frustrating. But with what the laws have been, I don't have a problem. Jippy might be a little bit different, but I think we have got it right in probably the first 2 weeks and what it does look like with that process.
As players or players playing out there know, the neck roll or head area is always they have to. Like it's actually, they would get a bad mark if the TMO didn't catch something like that, because it was pretty aggressive neck roll. It was definitely back to the old school days. But I think there were options around why. I remember Angus maybe going, you've got that one down here, but there's another infringement here and this is closer. So I think that was the yellow card, but then they had the option of 2 penalties and there was advantage. Rather than, if there wasn't the other option, they would have had to go back for the penalty all the way back in the 22.
We also had another email come through from Matthew Nixon related to that, where he talks about with so many subjective decisions, so many options on the field, does that make captaincy even more important? Not the leading from the front kind of captain, but the communicator with the ref kind of captain. He says that he felt that Jacobson did a better job there. It's
a fine balance. If you talk too much, you do have to, you can have that presence, but I do think that ref management is massive in the lead up, just as much as in, you've probably got to put some thoughts in their head around what you think the opposition's going to do that will go against you guys. So those sorts of that lead in during the week, and then obviously during the game, just reminding. I don't think you want to create too much new or complain. You want to just keep labouring the points that you've brought up during the week that you've seen. Luke Jacobson's really good. He's grown into the role. The hard thing is sometimes when you've got the co-captaincy, the ref can send you away pretty easily because they can assume it's someone or not. So I think the fact when there's this, you should probably dedicate an out-and-out player to talk to the ref, because it's not everyone's strength. But I think it's massive. I think it's huge. If you get it right, it can lead in your favour. And it is subjective, and that's why I always say, as long as it's consistent within the 80, then because you just can't have it consistent every week. It'll just be too hard.
Yeah. Bryn, you've obviously played under a number of captains. Do you find that the communicators often get you in a better place by the end of the game?
Well, definitely not for me, mate. I communicate too much. So, look, I think it all kind of starts with at the start of the week of like who your ref is. Like I just remember my time when I was playing back in New Zealand. We did it when we were at North Harbour with Jip as well. That understanding what ref you do have. That's really important. I think sometimes, for example, like Glenn Jackson, he was a perfect example that he didn't want to be able to have many conversations with a lot of people. So you'd pretty much just leave it to the captain, and knowing that information, players, even if you were frustrated, you knew that if you would go have a go at him, you'd probably lose him. So, understanding who the refs are and what they are is pretty important. Like Ben O'Keefe, for example, he doesn't actually mind having a chat on the run with a lot of people. So if you are able to give him like a clear solution or a picture to be able to just ask the question in a respectful way, then he's able to have that kind of dialogue with you. So I think the understanding of what the referees are and how they act is really important. And then I think, like Sam Whitelock was unbelievable in terms of just being able to plant little things, put them in the back of the ref's brain, being able to say, this is what we're seeing, these are the trends, and being able to do it in a respectful way. And if he felt that the ref didn't want to be able to have those conversations, then he'd leave it straight away and come back at a later point. So yeah, there's a really great balance. James was very, very good at it. Jipper was very, very good at it. So he'd be able to say to me, Bryn, you just shut up and let me talk to him. And I was like, no problem, mate. I will shut my mouth, and you can be able to try and manipulate the ref as best as we can. So yeah, those were the fun days back in the day with old Jipper, that was for sure.
It wasn't perfect. I'll give you the tip. But yeah, look, I think you don't want to get too chummy either. You don't want to say too much, because then you become white noise. You've got to be really methodical in actually having a purpose to chat with them. I think if you get too friendly, it just becomes easier to shoo you away, rather than, I think when you speak, you want to be heard, so don't speak too much, but say it with some sort of authority so that you get a response. Even if they disagree, you still will get a response. I think the worst thing is when they're just not listening to you. You've either talked way too much or you haven't set up that relationship that well.
Let's move on to the Hurricanes versus Moana Pacifica. I'm not 100% sure what to make of this game because the Canes look great, but MP brought in 7 debutants, and when you bring in that many, Bryn, you're always going to end up in a bad place. You know, they've got some experience, but this is what was going to happen.
I think in the early part of the year, for more so the squad, being able to give guys opportunities, and I think, you know, Tana, I think made it pretty clear, I think in the early part of the week that, you know, he was going to give guys opportunities whether the result was, you know, whether they won the result on the weekend before. So, yeah, look, it was tough, and I think they did start really well. I think, you know, they were very, very direct in that first try for Tupaea, and they were able to, I guess, you know, have the Hurricanes make some decisions defensively. But yeah, I think after that try, it was just pretty much an onslaught from the Hurricanes. I think, you know, having Jordie Barrett back in that squad is going to be massive for them to be able to go close to this title. Now, I know that it was against Moana Pacifica and they didn't have their full strength team and they weren't able to play where they wanted to, but like his involvement and his touches around what he's going to do for that group, especially in the attacking side of it, he's going to be massive for them. And I think, you know, even Billy Proctor coming on in that second half and his involvements with his combination with him, even that Balin Sullivan, he didn't have a bad game, but, you know, Billy Proctor and his involvements were awesome. And Harkin as well. I thought he was outstanding considering that Brett Cameron, like, man, that guy just cannot get any luck in terms of the injuries. You know, it didn't look that flash when I saw it on the weekend. So, you know, hopefully it isn't too bad for him. But I think, you know, that's going to open an opportunity. Do they want to have Harkin or being able to bring Lucas Cashmore, able to come into that number 10 role? And, you know, I think Ruben Love is out for a few more weeks. So I think, you know, in those kind of games, having a 10 like that is going to be pretty important. And I think interesting to see how they do go. But yeah, look, the attacking side of what the Hurricanes did, it was great to see. Anytime you can get your wingers scoring multiple tries, it just shows how hard that work's been done in the middle from the forwards and the offloading game. But yeah, I think the forward pack as well, they were outstanding with what they were able to give that platform, and it was a pretty impressive run, considering it was their first run of the season against a somewhat depleted Moana Pacifica team.
Can't be too hard on Moana, I think, defensively. Like Geordie's ability, and Braden, you'll say, just that midfield, the way they, I suppose, take contact and then offload, and normally their offload's out the back to a Harkin or a Cameron or whoever it may be, and they create further separation from the defence, and because of that, just buys them time and space, and with their skill set and Whinianga Nofo and his pace, it was. I think they would have done it to anyone. They were on. They still turned over the ball 23 times, but it's that risk first reward. You know, like they are looking to keep the ball alive through contact, and man, when they get it right, it is very effective. But I liked how they were trying to keep it alive by popping it back, rather than looking for offloads in and around the collision area. They you know, even Geordie's one like that, and just to be so hard. Like defence does dominate, you know, rugby quite a lot, especially with this rush defence. I think the 50-22 rule probably hasn't impacted it as much. Most teams are still bringing that line speed, so their ability to create that separation from defenders makes it extremely hard to defend.
How deep they were with their second and third pivots, where it's really hard for Moana to be able to come through and being able to, you know, I guess, you know, stop the attack that's in front of them. So I know that the game line success, they were able to get that through the offloads that Jipper was able to do and keep that lightning quick ball. But I think moving forward, their depth and whether that's going to be a common trend that you're going to see from the Hurricanes, it just shows that, you know, if you're a little bit deeper and you've got the kicking ability of Jordie Barrett to see the bridge pass, the kicking space, and then, you know, the likes of Billy Proctor and the outsides to be able to score points off of that, it was just really impressive to say. Now, I know it's only week one, but I really did enjoy seeing their depth and being able to see what that might look like for, especially against line speed teams that they're probably going to see in a few more weeks' time. They've
got a couple of tough games coming up. Do you go with Harkin? Or do you maybe look at Jordie Barrett and say, hey, can you run it for us for a couple of weeks?
Nah, Harkin. Harkin he's been a strong performer at NPC in the 10 jersey for Wellington for a long time. He's got the confidence. Like, he stepped straight up into that. You got to keep Jordie where he is. But he is. If you look at all their attacks, especially their strike plays, he is the key. Either crashing and offloading or taking attention of other defenders to create space. So I think him in the 12 jersey is paramount. I think, you know, you could go Harkin into 10. I think, you know, Balin Sullivan's too good to be on the bench, so maybe put him on the wing, Billy Proctor centre, and you can move Morby back to 15 for the time until Ruben Love gets back in there. Because you you look at Sullivan's performance as well. Like
Yeah.
he's one of the performers for the Hurricanes the last few years. The amount of line breaks he creates or makes defensively is good. So I think having him still on the field, and he can play wing just as well as anyone. So I think they've got options aplenty. That's the thing. That's why we've all said they're the dark horse, because their depth. Like now they're down to their first five, and we're not worried about it. Well, I'm certainly not worried about Harkin. I think he's good to go. He's proven that, and I think giving him the opportunity and their licence will probably be quite freeing for him.
Brenner, that midfield combination, talking about the depth with Balin, but when you look at Geordie, and Proctor came on and got 8 line breaks in no time flat. 8 line breaks, just like that. Is that the best midfield in the comp?
I think the depth that they do have, you'd have to think it is. And I think, Geordie Barrett, I think he's the best. He's the best in the country. And, him coming back from Leinster, it's great to be able to have him back in. You saw the involvements and the influences that he was able to have with his triple threat game, which we've talked about a lot when it comes to Geordie's skill set. But yeah, look, Billy Proctor coming back from, an All Blacks last year, been able to play a lot of minutes in terms of the international stage, and been able to then, come back to Super Rugby, and he looks like an All Black. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes when you see the All Blacks coming back, you see them, you're like, oh, right, that's an All Black, and that's what it looks like. So, yeah, I think, and Sullivan, to Jipper's point as well, I think considering what he's done the last couple of years, he's warranted of just being able to start. But I think you've got to put them all on the field, and I think having, Sullivan on the wing with Billy Proctor and then Geordie Barrett, to answer your question, Ross, I'd say who else would you put up there, Jipper, in terms of who would be a better midfielding stocks right now, considering with those two?
In terms of the combination, I'm not saying they're Nono and Smith, but they've played a lot of rugby together. And I think Geordie Barrett has come back with a new lease of life. I think that sabbatical over in Ireland has, I don't know, he just looks so hungry to just make a statement with his actions, and that that's only going to build confidence in Billy Proctor. Billy Proctor had a stop-start year last year as well, so his body's 100%. He's coming back into it, so I have no doubt that they will form regular teams of the week.
They're absolutely superb. Now let's carry on to the next game we're going to talk about. That's the Blues versus the Force. And Jip, at halftime, you must have been a nervous cat.
Yeah, well, it was one of those games that didn't really get me out of my seat the whole 80 minutes. It was a bit of a meh performance. Like obviously stoked to get the win, but I just felt like it was never free flowing or I suppose exciting. What we'd come off with all the other games previously. It just it was interesting. I just thought the tactics were strange. Both sides didn't kick much, and it was a hot afternoon. I don't know if they thought that it was just going to open up because of that fatigue. But yeah, and statistically you look at it and the Blues look good. 70% gain line, 50% dominant carries, 67 lightning quick ball. So the one thing the Blues can be, I suppose, happy with, once again, is, man, they get into the 22, they come away with points. They are very, very efficient in that 22, and I like the growth and the development of what they're trying to do, is really trying to tighten those defences, then going, like Stephen Pettifen's try, there was a 5 or none, so I think their effectiveness in the 22, now they need to get that effectiveness or come up with, I suppose, a similar understanding of assessment, probably from the halfway to the 22, sometimes just caught playing a little bit too much rugby in there, and after a while they'll resort to a high kick, but that's not necessarily getting them much either at the moment. So I think it's sort of similar to the Chiefs. Like they've got the result, but they just haven't hit, second gear or third gear just yet, which, I mean, is a positive thing for them because they got the result, but I don't think they'll be overly stoked with their ability to put a side away.
They got there, Brenner.
They scored 3 tries in the second half. Considering, I probably looked at that first and I was like, "Oh, this is a little bit, probably not where the Blues wanted to be able to be." But Zan Sullivan scores that try just after half time. Torian Barnes, and then obviously Forbes to be able to put it out a little bit more. But yeah, I don't know if you saw this as well, Jip. I just think the wind played a massive factor. I think watching the telecast, and I think both teams really, really struggled with that wind. I think in the first half, a couple of going long, but then a lot of them going out on the full as well. So I think the wind maybe had played a factor in terms of that low kicking rate. But Yeah, I think the Blues, like that DNA of when they were able to get inside that 22 and the efficiency, what were they at 67% of their 22 entries. So look, I think, when it comes to what's coming ahead, the collision area and being able to win game line success with the Brumbies, they know that they're able to be very, very good in that space with the Western Force. So a lot to work on, but yeah, very similar to what the Chiefs are at the moment. They're just not clunky, but yeah, both teams haven't been able to hit their straps. I think they have evolved, the Blues, I think, in terms of what their attack is, and they are been able to try to use the ball a little bit more when they aren't inside that 22. So you'd like to think through the duration of this Australian tour and a few more games, they're able to be a little bit more efficient of what they've been able to use the attack. But yeah, when they do get in that 22, you look at the skinny play with Caleb Clark to be able to get over the advantage line, and then the quick ball for Finlay Christie to be able to score one of the tries on the edge. They are showing a little bit more in that attacking side, which you probably didn't see last year with the Blues.
I'd just like to see, I suppose, the phase play. Like, they've had 15 turnovers, only 7 penalties, so they're very accurate, very disciplined side, which is what you want. But I just think, similar to the Chiefs, I don't want to keep comparing them, but you probably haven't seen, the Caleb Clarks with a lot of touches. Forbes with a lot of touches. It's sort of either trapped with the forwards and then they go for the kick. I just think, looking at the Hurricanes, if they can take one thing from them, is creating that separation with the second man play, or drawing defenders out and then creating that time and space by, I suppose, those bomb balls out the back to the second receivers. So I just think there's a little bit more risk they can take, which I know is crazy to be thinking that I'm saying that about the Blues, normally not a team that is afraid of risk, but I just think they're playing within themselves a little bit.
What do they do when Bowden comes back? Because Zan Sullivan seems very comfortable at fullback. Obviously, Stephen Pettifetter's finding his feet again at 10. All three of them can play 10 or 15, but most likely you probably wouldn't put Zan at 10 for the Blues. What do you do at fullback and 10 when Bodie comes back?
It's a good question. I don't know. Like, they're listening to Vern's comments, I suppose he's going to have to earn his spot back. So maybe Bodie's the one that's on the bench. If they get a result against the Brumbies, then that's probably what it'll be. If they don't, then it probably won't be. They'll probably get him back in. So it's a big week for the Blues, I feel. Not just for that selection point. It's just, man, if you can get a win in Canberra, you're coming away 2 from 2. They've had some good time together as a group. They've been able to sort of have those close conversations and understand each other and build that cohesion. It sets them up really, really well. But it's a big mountain to climb. And then going across late to Canberra, so that's one positive. They won't be bored in their hotel rooms. But yeah,
stay out of Coogee.
But yeah, I just think they need to set their attack alight. They're very effective in 22. I just think they can create a lot more than just resorting to the up and under kick contest.
So it looks like it might be another tough year for the Force. Bryn, kind of not quite there. But your boy Karl Tizzano, his numbers are crazy. He's a warrior for them.
He is, and I know Dripper and I, we take the piss out of it, I think, with McWright and Tizzano going back and forth. But yeah, look, I think if you look on both sides of the ball, look, he had 14 carries. He was the top of that. And for the Force, half his carries are over the gain line, which is a big part of what me and Jipper talk around, being able to get over the advantage line. And he was second in terms of the tackle count with 12 as well. So, yeah, when you talk around what he means to that Force team and what he's able to do on both sides of the ball, yeah, hopefully it's not a tough year for Western Force fans, but it'll only add to the debate whether it's Tizzano or McWright coming in for the Wallabies.
I'm pretty sure there's no debate. there's a clear selection of McWright regularly, sometimes captain. But look, he is special at Super Rugby level. And look, when he's had his crack, even I didn't mind him at 6. Joe Schmidt paid him a couple of games at 6. Like, he's a big ball carrying 7. So there is room for both of them in the yellow jersey. But the key is he needs a little bit of a hand because he attracts attention. So now, but it's a little bit like Harry Wilson. Harry Wilson's had to really develop his game because he was having about 40 carries. And it was just too predictable for defence. So I think for the Force to really unlock their attack, they need to sort of keep centering their game around Tizzano, but he has to have ways that he can put others into space or create opportunities for others rather than just constantly just barrowing ahead. Yeah, he gets game line carries, but it's not necessarily backed up by quick ball or an opportunity to strike down the flanks. So I think utilising his teammates around him will be critical. Like, there is a lot to be said for his hunger and his want, especially when it's close to the line. He certainly gets into those pick and goes pretty quickly. But I think when he's in that phase play, he could probably, his teammates could help him out by saying shift the ball. I don't know what the comms are, so I'm not just saying it's his fault, but it's becoming predictable. So you can, and by predictable, you know, as a player defensively, I can see where he's lining up in a ball carrying position. I'm going to fly because it's going to go to him. Now, if they can create something where it looks like that and it doesn't go to him, that's when you can sort of make the defenders play.
Right, the Waratahs versus the Drua, it was pretty one-sided. Another Jorgenson classic.
Oh, that was ridiculous, man. Like, this is the Drua too. Like, they're used to, players from young ages just, getting whacked like that. They're normally doing it to the Waratahs. Like, he had 3 or 4 metres of space, and for me, yes, the footwork was amazing, but the turn of pace from the step to go and score, knew he was close, so he did the dive. I don't know, like, we spoke about him last week, but he is just the rising star for Australian rugby, isn't he? Like, he could walk into any team, any international team with these performances.
Yeah.
So great under the high ball, probably could play fullback as well, and then just electric, backs himself. And there's no fanfare, is there? Like, that was an amazing try, and he just puts it down. He's like, back to halfway.
Scored a couple of these before.
Yeah. He just seems like a real level-headed guy. Look, it wasn't the best game, but the Waratahs ran away with it. It's another win for them. The Drua, I think you can see in Glenn Jackson, even in the press conference last week after the Moana game, you can see the frustration, I suppose, the pressure rising on that coaching staff, because they're just, they were in it. They were in it probably that first 40, they were there or thereabouts, but late in the game they just let things go.
Bryn, you give a person a ball in position Matt Jorgenson was in, and they've got to score that try to save your life. Which wingers in Super Rugby are you backing in that position to do what Jorgenson did? Are there many?
Oh, I think it's more so just the footwork. Like, we know that he's really fast. Like, if you want to look at speed, you look at Tangitau, who's had a great start to there. Any of those kind of outside backs at the Hurricanes, they're able to score at will at the moment. But you're like, there's not many. I'd say, yeah, but like Sever, yep, he's very good with his feet. But I think what I like about Max Jorgenson, it's just his speed jip. Like, it's whether it's a little bit of footwork to get on the outside and then being able to just pin your ears back to be able to score points or beat someone. I think he's pretty special. Like, if you look around speed, like a Will Jordan, possibly, with a one-on-one. But look, I think Max Jorgenson, and he's got the ability to be able to kick as well. Seen as well in his career, being able to do chip and chase and get the ball back as well. So, yeah, off the top of my head, there wouldn't be many. I think, like, in the first 2 weeks you're seeing, you'd have to think Tangitau. He'd be another guy that, when it comes to speed, and I think more so brute strength in his footwork, he's probably one that I think, along with Jorgenson being one I'd want to be able to put money on.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone that has, like, Caleb Clark, Tangitau. They're not going to do the footwork. Like, he was very patient, sized them up, did that, and to have that injection of pace, he is like just a unique beast. Like, he's a big body, but it was that he can just go from 0 to 100 so quick, and he's just such a weapon. And the beauty of, and I haven't been a big fan of Suoli'i in the midfield, but I think the beauty of him at centre is it poses way too many questions, so the defence actually tightens up, which gives him more time and space, even when there's a bounce pass or a lob pass. So if the Waratahs can continue and, having that platform in that tight 5 area, they could seriously be contenders.
The Drua, on the other hand...
No, I'm not sure about the Drua.
Are they wooden spooners, Brynner? Are they there with the Force fighting for the wooden spoon?
Oh, well, I think if you look at the first 2 weeks, they're definitely in the conversations around that. I think what they do have, and you'd like to think, hopefully, I back them to be able to win at home. And that's the biggest part that, for the Drua. If they're able to win games at home, which they've shown consistently throughout their time in Super Rugby Pacific, then it gives them a chance to be able to win games. But yeah, I don't know what their run is. Is it 24 games or something like that? They haven't been able to win away from home. I think it's a number like that. So we've touched on it a lot. If they're able to win at home and get their wins at home, where they were in conversations to be able to be in that top 6 or the top 8 previously. But yeah, if they aren't able to win at home, then yeah, it's probably going to be a long year for them.
They have to try and, I think at home, they've got to try and empty your tank. I'm not saying put the kicking boots away, but they're going to have some Fijian flair, I think. They look a well-structured side, even in that Moana Pacifica game. It looked very orchestrated. I just think they've got to go back to a bit of instinct and just back their skill set, back their ability to do things other teams can't. Because at the moment, they just probably look a little bit too rigid. Armstrong Ravula needs to be let loose, have a crack. Put a chip and chase in. Let's do more attacking kicks. Let's look for quick taps. Things that when they made the playoffs, that's what they were doing just instinctively. They were just like boom. It was so. I know normally previous years I've been like they need to tone down that, but I think they've probably gone too far the other way.
Right, they've lost a couple of key players, which probably affects maybe the way that they run their in-game stuff.
Yeah, and I just think experience, what it's like, well, unfortunately I do, when a team's under pressure and not having the results, you almost overanalyze and overcoach and, you get too caught up in the pressure rather than having that ability to just, take the blinkers off and back your skill set and have a look at what you can do. But I think it's from these quick taps and, there's more free kicks in and around with these new laws that you want to see, Amani in there, quick tap, go, have a crack. Even if it's a quick tap, kick for a 50-22 or just things that you'd expect no one else to do. That's what I suppose they're best at in this comp, but they've gone away from it.
Just heading back to the Waratahs, Moananu. Yeah. What a great buy from the Crusaders. I mean, I would have thought value for money-wise, possibly the best buy in the comp this year.
Yeah, massively. And I think the hardest thing is I think every New Zealand team wanted him as well, that there was just no space due to the way contracts timing had run. So I think he's over there for a bit. And from what I understand, he will be back in New Zealand at some stage. But he's a hell of an impact player. And that battle for the number 2 jersey, if he keeps putting that pressure on, we saw how good he was in the 2 jersey for the Crusaders. His strength with ball in hand, but it's also his ability in and around the breakdown. His low centre of gravity, he can really get over and get those key breakdown turnovers or at least slow the ball down. And, he does have that accuracy at line out and scrum time. So he is a very, very good buy. And if he can keep scoring meat pies, I think, what was it, his first touch? I think Michael Hooper's his new fan. He was very impressed with his first touch. I don't know how he got there for that first try. It looked like he was held back 3 metres and then all of a sudden he's slamming it down. Yeah. So we know how good he is. It's no surprise he's doing well. And whether he's in 2 or 16, he will have a big impact on that Waratah side.
So, Bryn, if he's not the best buy in Super Rugby this year, who is? Because there's been some decent purchases.
Look, I think Pete Samu's a sneaky one as well. If you talk around with the Waratahs and them signing even Matt Phillip coming back from Japan. So, look, I think they've had some really good buys in terms of money for money. So, I think Peter Aki as well for the Blues. I think he's been a good buy for them and what he's going to be able to bring for them moving forward. I think there's obviously Xavier Taeli that's there who had a really good year last year and been able to be a young guy coming through. But I think with his experience and what Peter does bring, especially gain line over the advantage line, it's going to be really big. But yeah, I'd say those would be the 2 that I reckon have been really good. Angus Ta'avao as well. I think will be a big one for the Highlanders who they have signed. But I've been really, really impressed, I guess, with Peter Aki and what he's been able to do with the Blues in the first couple of weeks of this competition.
Okay, Player of the Week.
Player of the Week, it has to be Jorgenson. Close with Tangitau, that injection of pace towards the end, but I think that was just more seen an opening rather than creating. I felt like Jorgenson's try was just, I was gobsmacked, absolutely gobsmacked. But in terms of impact on a game, Quinn Tupaea probably had the most, but I mean, it's probably too hard to go 2 weeks in a row with Quinn. So give the Aussies a bit of love and Jorgenson for me.
You, Brenner?
I think Jorgensen is a good one. I think Geordie Barrett had an outstanding game against the Moana Pacifica. I think the involvements and his influences of what he's able to do for Hurricanes team will be massive for this year. So I was going to pick Geordie Barrett, but I'm just going back to Quinn Tupaea. I think considering it was a derby game, the moment to be able to, I guess, have a 14-point play and the heads-up play was a big part of that. But I think just the way that he's playing at the moment is massive for the Chiefs. And yeah, he was it last week for Jipper. But for me, I think Quinn Tupaea and his start to this year has been outstanding. So I'll be going Quinn Tupaea for my man this week.
I honestly acknowledge he probably was the player of the round in terms of impact. But the other thing I love about Quinn Tupaea is defensively, because he got those 3 turnovers against the Blues, you watch how many Highlanders pile into every ruck when he enters it, and that actually stagnates their attack because he's such a threat. And it's just like both sides of the ball. The guy could not be playing any better.
He is the man. Right, tipping. Let's have a look at this weekend. First up, Moana Pacifica versus the Force.
Moana Pacifica. I'm just going to say travel. And look, they beat the Drua in Fiji. They're not a bad side. And I think the Hurricanes would have done a number on any side the way they were playing the other night. So I'll stick with them.
Yeah, I'll go Moana Pacifica. I think, hopefully Willie Harvilli's all right as well. I think, it was a little bit scary to see his injury, and we know how important he is for that Moana Pacifica team. But yeah, I think they'll get a good support base at Pukekohe, and I think the Moana Pacifica will get a win against the Force at home.
Reds v Highlanders. Can the Highlanders go to Queensland and get that win?
Yeah, I think they can. I think, the Reds are always tough to play at Suncorp. They're always tough. Jipper and I know how hard it is to travel there, and I guess the conditions, how wet it is there with the humidity, might be tough. But I think they can just are able to not have those kind of errors in the 22 area and been able to open up a little bit more with what Jip was kind of saying. I know they have a heavy base around their kicking game, but if they're able to open up their attack a little bit more and give the ball to Caleb Tangitau, that's all I say. So he's a big part of it.
Tangitau, baby.
Pollock's gone as well. Tangitau, baby.
We Tangitau, baby, and we're going to move to the Six Nations soon because I'll be saying Jamison Gibson Park, baby. But I'll be going the Highlanders to get a win up in the Reds.
Yeah, I'll go the Landers. I think they're a genuine contender this season.
Yeah.
They look real good. More Tangitau, baby. Landers.
Excellent. Okay, Drua versus the Hurricanes. Hurricanes away. Straightforward for you, Brynner.
Hurricanes.
Chiefs go home, Brynner, and they face your Crusaders. Can you see the Crusaders going up to Hamilton and getting that win?
Geez, what did the Chiefs do for draw-wise? To be able to get 3 derbies early doors, that's incredible. Look, when have I ever not picked the Crusaders, Ross, to be honest?
Well, today, actually.
So
I get the feeling from that look on your face. I got the feeling that...
I mean, you've just waxed lyrically about the Chiefs all day. The pressure's on.
I picked the Crusaders, but that's just more so with my heart, to be honest, because I think everything around their depth-wise and how they have played and been battle-tested, I think, as well. But then there might be the other side. It's a third derby game. Will they be a little bit more tired? Will they rotate their squad a little bit more? I'm not too sure, but yeah. That's my heart, so I'll say Crusaders. Drippy, you give a little bit more analytic news around why they'll beat the Crusaders.
In case you missed that, that means Brynner with his head is picking the Chiefs, right? I think that's what's happened here.
Very similar to what I said about a week ago.
Can we apply a similar theory to the Blues going to the Brumbies and getting an away win?
I think this is going to be hard. This is going to be a big mountain to climb. Can they do it? Yes. But if they think they're going to do it by just kicking and going down to the 22 and rolling their sleeves, I think they have to just chance their arm a little bit more. I'd like to see, and I know Zane Sullivan tried to do it and it went out on the full, but somehow they've got to utilise this 50-22. And I know I keep going on it, but they've got the ability, if they can create time and space and put teams in the backfield and they can give the ball to Caleb Clark, I just don't think he's been freed up enough. I think if the more he can be in the game, we saw that little skinny move, but he needs to be touching the ball more times than that. He needs to be touching it like Tangitau, like Jorgenson. You need to get him in some time and space, and I don't think there's much stopping them. I'll go with the Blues head and heart. I think they can get the job done. I'm not as, I suppose, on the fence as I suppose the Crusaders and Chiefs for Bryn, but I think this is their season. If they want to win it, they need to win this game.
Yeah. It's going to be difficult.
The Blues only gave away 7 penalties. I think they're averaging 7 penalties a game. They didn't give many away against the Chiefs. They're not going to get the ability to just piggyback themselves into the 22 and do them all, the Brumbies. They're going to have to They have to get the job done.
Britta, as long as they're not staying in Coogee, the Blues can do it?
Yeah, if they're in Coogee, man, it's a no-go. Drop that percentage right down if it's in Coogee. But no, look, I think, we have talked around not the clunkiness, but I think not being able to get into second and third gear with the Blues. But I think what I did enjoy and what you do need when you go to Canberra is physicality. And that Blues forward pack, especially against the Force, they're able to have 71% gain line, 48% of them were dominant carries out of the 100, so 100 carries that they did have. So it's a big part of it. The efficiency, Ross, that you've touched on maybe earlier last week, how important that is when it comes to winning games. So I think if they're able to get that right with their forward pack and stand up, and hopefully unlock what Jip is talking around, being able to get the likes of Caleb Clark and Forbes and Sian Sullivan to get more touches on the edge, it'll be a little bit too much for the Brumbies. But you're always tough to go to Canberra. Jip and I both know, so hopefully there's a good sunshine there this part of the year as well.
Coming from the top 14, this is Pitaki's game to stand up. It's going to be very similar style, crash and bash.
Yeah.
He is well suited to dominate this collision.
Thank you once again for joining the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Now, please catch us on any of our platforms. Go to Aotearoa Rugby Pod Official. You can get our content across YouTube, across our socials, and of course, as an audio podcast on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get them. So please go catch us there. Of course, we're with stuff.co.nz, so you can catch the full audio podcast there, as well as stories throughout the week. Go to Rugby Pass. You'll find on Rugby Pass the podcast there as well, and also an incredible group of statistics for every game. Go to the Match Centre, see the stats. That's where we're getting our stats from as well. So please catch us again soon at the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Mā te wā.